So, welcome. This is going to be a really informal talk, and then we're going to have a chat and some questions at the end. What I was really inspired to talk about today is, canine nourishment of a different kind. Nourishing our companion animals is a really important subject for me. Has been for a long time. And when we think of nourishment, most people, when we think of nourishment, it's like, oh, well, it's our diet, it's how we nourish ourselves and what we eat, and excuse me, the food that we eat and the water that we drink and where that water comes from, etc., etc. And what's so beautiful, thanks Margaret, seeing your message. What's so beautiful in the canine community now, in the canine profession and industry, is this wealth, like explosion of interest about how to nourish our canines, how to nourish our dogs, what's the correct food that they should be feeding. And that is one element of nourishment, but there is all manner of the things that also include nourishment, and one of those aspects of nourishment I'm going to talk about today. So that's where we're going to go to in a moment. But like Amrys so politely invite me to do, is just to give you a little introduction about who I am and the work that I do. So I am a canine wellness practitioner, I am a shamanic practitioner, I have a PhD in conservation biology, I'm a zoologist, I have a master's in conservation biology as well, and I spend working with captive wolves in a wild park in the UK. And all those things have been my passion, my love for animals, my study of zoology, my love for nature and the environment and the planet and conservation, my love for canines. And so when I was doing my PhD, I really wanted to, I had my head set on becoming a conservation biologist for wolves, so a wild canine conservation biologist. And really my focus was on wolves. I didn't care whether I was going to be in America, whether I was going to be in Europe. I was just going to be out for the rest of my life, just in the field, in the mud, in the rain, in the snow. Come rain or shine, just exploring wolves, studying wolves, looking at this kind of conflict and coexistence between predator and man, or predator and humans. And yeah, that's kind of my dream. That's like how I kind of saw my life. And it really didn't work out that way. And for the better, actually, there was a time in my life where it didn't work out that way, and I was really stuck and confused. And that's kind of the part of the story that I want to share for getting into the talk today of canine nourishment of another kind, because I've always had this underlying knowing since a child. And I'm going to say, I mean, from when I can remember, since I was 8 years old, but from as long as I can remember, like as a child, I used to always ask for a wolf and a bear. Always asked for a wolf and a bear. And also, this is the bit I can't quite remember why, but I used to also ask for a fireman's ladder. So I don't quite know why, but I always had to have my wolf and my bear and my fireman's ladder. Needed those three things. That was really important for my life. But my wolf and bear had to be real and alive, but small enough so that they could fit in my pocket. So wherever I went, my wolf and bear could come with me, because they'd be alive, but they'd fit in my pockets, so they'd always be with me. And so I kind of became quite disheartened as a child. Like, my poor parents, person, like I was surrounded and loved by my parents, but I just became really disheartened, because I'm like, well, I do everything that I'm asked for. I'm polite to my grandparents. I do the chores. I'm like, I get taught that you were rewarded when you these are the rewards that come in when you do as you're told, and like that. All I really want is my real life wolf and bear and fireman's ladder. Like, why? Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not getting these things, these gifts? And then obviously I realised that I got a little bit older, and then realised that I didn't get those things because it can't happen in this physical world. At least it can't happen. So that's kind of. But I always had this wolf and bear. Even to this day, I have a wolf and bear that follows me. But as an older child, and really I can remember this from around 8 years old, I've always had this just knowing of our connection to life. Not really sure where it came from, to be honest, but just had this knowing. And so I started to read books around Indigenous wisdom, Indigenous knowing, Indigenous life, traditions, beliefs, cultures, customs. I kind of want to say I was maybe, because I didn't quite understand it so well at the time, but even I think maybe when I was 11 or 12, I read Bury My Heart, Wounded Knee. So really into these kind of deep histories and teachings. And I got to, yeah, early teens, like maybe not even quite teens, like 11 years old and maybe 10 or 11. And I'd say to my friends, like, guys, we had like a local nature reserve near where I lived called the Sandhills. And I was like, guys, should we go down the Sandhills and talk to the stones? And people like that, well, no, Isla, because that's just weird. Like, nobody does that. Like, what are you talking about? So I just kind of, I shut it off. I was just like, oh, I'll just do some stuff on my own in my bedroom or whatever. But I just kind of shut that off. And then came the academia. So then I went into academia. I went into science and biology and ecology, population dynamics, zoology, conservation. But it threw me really deep into that left brain, that analytical brain, that you've got to analyse, you've got to find the evidence, you've got to criticise, you've got to always find meaning. And like we've just talked about before the recording happened, of the work that I'm going to go, some of the work that I'm going to share, some of the teaching I'm going to share, like the mind can't comprehend it. Literally, it can't, because this side of us that we are, this part of us that needs nourishing, this part of our dogs that need nourishing, it can't be dissected. And that's what's really confusing for us as humans, because we are so conditioned at an early age to just kind of live by the mind and what the mind tells us and what the mind understands. And this goes against what the mind can comprehend, what the mind can understand. But yeah, I kind of was in academia, and you know, it's almost like I did some work. I'm doing some of my own work at the moment, just with like some of my ancestral work. And one of the things that came through was like, I was so proud. Like, I've got a PhD. Like, wow. Like, imagine what your life must be like having a PhD. And I was the most miserable I've been in my entire life. I was miserable, because I had this underlying belief system of that I'm not good enough. And like, yeah, I've got a PhD, but you know, I kind of fluked it. I just worked really, really hard, so I must have fluked it. Like, I'm still not good enough. What gives me authority to talk about this or to want to do this, or yeah, just I'm not good enough. And with that, there was an underlying message of that I'm not deserving. And that's a really big part of a story of why I do what I do now, or partly what I do, because there's an element where I have my kind of canine behaviour hat on, and I'm just looking at our dogs from a behaviour perspective of, oh, okay, this is how we're going to support the dog in terms of who he is, just because the dog needs a bit of behavioural support. But it's not really, although I'm good at doing that, and it's important to explore and to consider and be part of what our dogs are, it's not really what speaks to me, it's not really where my passion is. But after my PhD, I had an opportunity arose for me to work with captive wolves, which is what I did. But still kind of having this belief system of like, oh, I'm just not deserving. I'm not deserving of anything. And so really, because I held on to that belief system, it placed me into this situation where, because I believed and felt I wasn't deserving of anything, I placed myself in situations where that showed up to me. Like, oh, well, I don't feel like I'm deserving, and I was in a relationship that was very dangerous. It was abusive. It was yeah, a very, very uncomfortable time of my life, but also kind of one of the best times of my life, one of the worst times of my life, because it was also when I was working with the captive wolves. And I had one of my wolf dogs, Isla, who's still with me today. She's 13. And through her own trauma, Isla is a dog that I don't really like to use the word reactive, because again, it's very linear. It's very like, oh, let's just label the animal, and that's just unhelpful and disrespectful. So for me, it's just like, do you know what? She is a dog that struggles to cope at a particular moment in time. She's a dog that is sensitive to her survival, and this is what I'm going to talk about in a moment. But I love looking at the underlying message of why our dogs show up, not just of the support that our dogs need, but the messages that our dogs show up in this life, or maybe when they've passed, as a message for us, as a teaching for us. So I am so grateful for Isla being a dog who's sensitive for her survival, because she literally saved my life. There was a point in my life where I was like, do you know what, I'm done. I'm just done now. I'm just going to end my life, because life is just really not good. And I didn't, because her fate was so uncertain. Just being a dog that was really, she doesn't feel comfortable around strangers. She doesn't feel comfortable around other dogs. She's a wolf dog. She's a difficult individual to understand for many people. It's like that. What happens if she's destroyed as a result of that? And that's not fair. And so there was a point in my life when there was a beautiful woodland that I used to always visit, just every day, just go and sit in the woodland. And so I was sat in this woodland, really not having a clue what to do with my life, just not having a clue of like, wow, like what am I going to do? And there was a particular tree that I would visit, and this tree, its trunk, how it grew was it kind of came out almost like an arm and then grew up, and so this arm it hung off the floor, so I could sit on it and it would just bounce up and down. It's just like being on a seat, like one of those little baby seats when you were a kid. It just like was like one of those. And so I was sitting on this tree as I normally do, and literally, I mean, if anybody saw me, it's just proper waterworks, like snot, tears, everything, like just didn't care. Crying my eyes out, and I heard this voice that said, "You are enough," and I was mortified because I was like, oh, like the farmer stood right behind me, been watching me for the last half an hour, like, and he's just spoken, and I was mortified. So I turned around and I was like, oh, but there's nobody there. Like, I definitely heard those words. I just went back to crying and snotting, and I heard it again, and that's when I realised, like, that's come from the tree. That has absolutely come from the tree, and that really took me on this really deep exploration of there is something deeper. And so I've always had this connection of, yeah, we are connected to the plants and the stones and the waters and the stars, but I never really deeply practiced it or deeply connected to it. It was almost like that's been and gone in my time. You know, maybe if I was 200 years younger, like a time 200 years ago, maybe like really, really way in the future. But, you know, I'm a white English girl. How on earth am I going to have a spirit connection? Like, that's time gone. Like, not for me now. It's just, you know, a romance. It's just something that is something from time gone by. But yeah, I got this message from the tree, and it just threw. It was almost like it was like a lease of life. Yeah, that threw me deep into then this spiritual exploration, which has taken me a while to start to share in the canine industry, because I'm sure all industries are ruthless in their own right, but the canine industry is a very critical, judgmental, cruel population and community to be in at times. As Amrys and I know, there's a group of us that are really supportive and really empowering and really open for exploration, but it's a distorted kind of organism in itself, which is what it is. But there's always been something that, for me, completes the picture. And so that's why today I want my talk to be about like this canine nourishment of a different kind. And when we think of nourishment, like how I started this talk, was about, when we think of nourishment, really we think of like, oh, nourishing our body, or we kind of nourishing the soul. But canine nourishment, we would most often think, particularly in our industry, in our profession, the canine nourishment is going to come through as like, oh, well, what are we feeding our dog? What's the right thing to feed our dog in terms of what the dog is as a species, in terms of the dog as a biological organism, how we feed the nervous system well, how we feed the immune system well, how we feed the digestive system well, etc., etc. But that's only part of what any of us are. And so in order for us to have complete nourishment as an ecosystem, and this is how I always see life as well as a conservation biologist, I was taught in ecosystem stability, ecosystem health. And so I really want us all to see ourselves and to see our companion animals and to see all of life as an ecosystem. And so if we think about that first and foremost as just a cell, like one of our cells that makes our entire body, that cell within it is an ecosystem, this busy little factory doing different things, interacting as just one little cell. That is an ecosystem. And then if we think of ourselves as a physical being, like right now, it's like I am just a cell that connects to Amrys, that connects to Cara, that connects to Margaret, that connects to everybody that is listening to this talk, that then becomes an ecosystem as well. So we have this beautiful dynamic dance and soup that we sit within of, we are an ecosystem within an ecosystem within an ecosystem. And so when we think of what an ecosystem is a complex network of interconnected systems that are interacting and communicating between the flow of energy of those systems. And so the way that I see life, the way that I see our animals, the way that I see anything is first and foremost underneath the physical being that we are, which is so hard for our mind and our eyes to kind of understand. is that everything is a vibration and frequency. First and foremost, everything is a vibration and frequency. And as an ecosystem that is at a particular moment in time emitting a particular frequency and a particular vibration, I want to know, how do we maintain that health? How do we maintain that nourishment for that ecosystem? And so as we think of our dogs as an ecosystem, a complex network of interconnected systems, our cells are a complex network of interconnected systems. Our dog, as it stands as a physical being, is a complex network of interconnected systems within itself. Its immune system, its digestive system, its nervous system, its anatomy, its organs, its blood, it everything. But as one has a vibration. As one, we have a vibration, and then as a collective, we have one vibration. But there are so many things that create this malnourishment in our dog's ecosystem, so many things that create a malnourishment in our own ecosystem as well. And so one of the aspects of nourishment that I'm really focusing on and exploring, because it's so important, is spiritual nourishment or spiritual malnourishment of our dogs. Because we are, as humans, you know, our dogs coexist with us, they live with us, they live in our homes, and as humans we are subject to and are suffering with spiritual malnourishment. When we think of this circle that we exist in, when we think of our own ecosystem, our nourishment includes physical nourishment, includes mental nourishment, includes emotional nourishment, and there is so much information now. I mean, it's like you can't keep up with that research, because no sooner do you read a paper or a book and there's another 12 papers come out within the hour around mental health, emotional health, physical health. Like, it's important what we eat, it's important what we don't eat, it's important to look at our movement, our exercise, it's important our emotional stability, to look at like what affects our emotions, what emotions are, it's important to look at our mental health, and it is. But I also feel like there's an imbalance there, where there is so much focus on physical nourishment and emotional nourishment and mental nourishment, but to complete that picture, to stabilize the ecosystem, we also need to look at spiritual nourishment. And this is the thing, everything is interconnected. As an ecosystem, everything is interconnected. So as we're speaking now through Zoom, I always say, like, it just looks like there's space. Oh, there's just space here. There's not space here. There is a nervous system. There's an energetic nervous system that connects me to all of you, and you to all, and you to me, or all of you to me. And this is why when we pull on a thread, it affects all of us, whether we know it or not. You know, a great example that I talked about last year was reminding people, don't worry even if you're kind of been resting, if you haven't really been, you know, very busy during the pandemic, don't worry if you feel absolute fatigue, because as a collective, we are all suffering with adrenal fatigue, because so many of us went into shock and panic and fear, and it took a while for us to kind of then get into that new system and that new way of life and that understanding what's going to happen. And then we kind of took a sigh of relief, boom. Just as a collective, we went into adrenal fatigue because so many of us were working and operating from that perspective and that level. But this is what I'm aware of for our dogs that we live with so closely, is as humans, we are living from a place that we are subject to prolonged states or constant states of nervous system distress, of that sympathetic activation that is constant or is prolonged, without enough rest, without enough recovery. And that really affects our vibration, that really affects our frequency, and we are not separate from anything. So I really love this concept, this teaching of entrainment. And the best way that I speak to my clients about entrainment is as someone that has a clock shop, that owns clocks. The clock with the biggest pendulum, the clock that has the biggest swing, actually influences all the other clocks to swing at the same time. And that is a beautiful example of vibration and frequency, because when we are in a community, or when we just are coexisting with our dogs, our coherence, our heart rate, the thoughts that we have, the words that we speak, are we stuck in this cycle of thought processes, of belief systems, of self-limiting doubts, of stress, of panic, of worry, when we don't even know what is going to happen, then that can start to heavily influence our dogs and have an effect on their vibration and their frequency. And so this is like a huge subject when we think of our dogs as an ecosystem. But that's one of the things that I want us to understand when we're looking at spiritual nourishment, or in fact spiritual malnourishment that so many of us are suffering from. is the reason why we feel a disconnect, is the feel why we feel lost, is the reason why we just don't feel quite right. And also it has an effect on our entire system. So our spiritual nourishment influences our physical nourishment and our mental nourishment and our emotional nourishment. So where we are lacking in one, we're going to be lacking in all three. And just because of the work that I do from a spiritual perspective, I know that when we start to explore spiritual nourishment, the huge impact it has on our physical nourishment, on our mental nourishment, and also the impact that has on our dog's ecosystem and their nourishment as well. And this is the beauty of our dogs. This is the beauty of, you know, the messages that they come as a spirit. So everything is physical, but behind anything that is physical, anything that is living also has a soul, it also has a spirit. Like a single blade of grass has its own spirit, a tree has its spirit, a stone has its spirit. Our dogs have been many things and will be many things, and this is in the work that I do when I connect to the spirit of the dog is what's so profound. Like, as Amrys knows, I do a soul connection as often as I can with one of my dogs, Tunkasila, and I literally I share what it is she wants to say, what she wants to speak. But I do the same thing with clients and their dogs. When I'm connecting to the soul of the dog, it isn't just, of course, I'm focusing on the dog's life. What does the dog require? What does the dog need? What support does the dog need for its soul to be nourished in this lifetime? But our dogs are also many things. They have been many things. They will be many things, just like us, because of the spirit that they have, the spirit that they are. And so our dogs also come as these beautiful messages, these beautiful carriers, these beautiful teachings. Sometimes it is like, I might work with a client, for example, that they're like, oh, my dog, I'm just so impatient with my dog right now. And I'm like, really interesting. What's the reflection there? Like everything can be a mirror, everything can be a reflection. Like, you're telling me about impatience, like impatience is coming up for you when you're with your dog. What is it about yourself that you have impatience in? What is it about yourself where you get frustrated? What is it about yourself? Like, I had another client like, oh, I just want my dog to be perfect. I'm like, okay, well, first and foremost, everything is perfect right now. We are all perfect exactly as we are. I tell you now. But also with perfection, like, where does that perfection come from? So our dogs are actually really beautiful, almost like volunteers to go, do you know what? Yeah, I'll help my guardian. I'll help my guardian overcome this, whether they actually recognise it or not. I'll be there to be that medicine as well. So we come together on this spiritual journey together. Like, our dogs are here to have their own spiritual experience. We are here to have our own spiritual experience, but we also come together as the dog that we are coexisting with to have this journey of our spiritual nourishment together. And as we work on our own spiritual nourishment, we support our dogs, or we can, you know, if we've got a rescue dog, like, wow, we're always working on our spiritual nourishment, but if we get to a place where, like, wow, I feel really good, I feel my spirit is strong, I'm recognizing my fears, I'm recognizing my stresses, I'm recognizing these stories that I've just been told, or that I've told myself time and time again, and I'm working with them. I know how to work with them. So we might be in a good place ourselves, but we are then working with a dog that may be shut down. We're working with a dog that we're getting from a rescue centre. We can start to nourish that dog's spirit. We can start to nourish that dog's ecosystem. And so what I always find helpful when we are supporting and nourishing our dog's soul is to really have a deep awareness of ourselves as well. Where is it that we are living and operating from? Like, what is our vibration? Because, you know, I did a little Canva thing today, which is like, if we truly want to allow our dogs to have their best life, which is obviously what we do want, if we truly want to allow our dogs to have the best life, then we actually have to allow ourselves to have our best life. We're very good, like, oh, well, I'll do everything for my dog, and I want my dog to feel really happy, I want my dog to feel really, really good. But again, we have to also look within and give ourselves permission to go, do you know what? Like, it's not about me, I'm not important. Yes, you are important. Like, everyone that is here is important. So again, as we work on ourselves vibrationally, we work on our dogs, and sometimes it is a separate thing. I'm not denying that, because that is also the work that I do. But there's also this beautiful dance where often I'm working with a client, and really I'm working with the human. I'm working with the human guardian, and as I'm working with the human guardian, it's just, wow, the dog just starts to change. They start to, as the human guardian blossoms, so does the dog. And one of the ways we can do that, really, which is so powerful, is the beauty of living with an animal that is not human, the beauty of living with a non-human animal, is that as an animal, we are the only species that operates from the brain. We are the only species that has self-limiting doubts. We are the only species that creates belief systems or self-limiting belief systems. No other animal does. And this is the beauty of coexisting with a dog, and the beauty of what they teach us, of all animals live and operate and respond from their heart, which we should be doing as well, exactly the same. When we drop into that place of our heart, when we come into that place of stillness, of silence, of being present. And it's difficult at first, it's uncomfortable, because our mind tells us to like, get distracted, come on, you should be biting your nails or doing the dishes or picking up the children or writing a book, or certainly you should just not be sitting still, because, you know, do you actually deserve that? I mean, yeah, you do. You actually deserve to be sitting still, and coming back to that coherence, that heart coherence, that through entrainment is creating a connection, a spirit connection, a soul connection between you and your dog. And so the invitation first and foremost is to just have an awareness of our thoughts, because we have these thoughts that plague us from, you know, when we're children, we're very much like non-human animals. From around the age 0 to 7 years old, we see life as just a tapestry of energy and motion, is what non-human animals see it. There's no label for anything. There's no like, no label for a pen, no label for a drum beater, no label for anything. It's just like, wow, I see this as something that's a physical formation as a result of vibration and frequency. It's created something physical. And so as young children, we live and operate and exist in that place. We're not tainted by anything. We don't have any judgments or criticisms or expectations or beliefs. We don't like, our family might tell us, people that red coats are not very nice. You can't trust people that wear red coats. So then as children, we're like that, oh, better not trust people that wear red coats, because that's what we've been told. That's been instilled to us at such a young age. And so this work is really, really deep, because it's changing our belief systems. But what I want to share with that is, because we are vibration and frequency, thoughts become things. What we think becomes a thing. It becomes a matter. The words that we speak become things, and the words that we speak hold an energy, hold a vibration. And so it's even starting to look at the thoughts that we have about ourselves, the thoughts that we have about our life, the thoughts that we have about our dogs, the words that we speak to our dogs. I mean, I have clients, and from a place of no judgment, because at that moment they're not in that place of understanding, but clients that will email me, oh, my dog's a pain in the backside, he's really naughty, he's just such a stinker. You see it on social media all the time, oh, my dog's like an a-hole, my dog, and I'm like that. Even though there is a little bit of jest in there at times, it's like, wow, but it's the words that you're writing, the words that you're speaking, that holds a vibration, that holds a frequency. And so it's having pure awareness from the heart, having that heart awareness of the thoughts that we have become things, the words that we speak become things, and really practicing what our dogs teach us. Many messages and many teachings they bring to us, but one of those things is, heart presence, heart awareness, and thinking of our dogs as this ecosystem and feeding their soul as we need to feed our soul, so that we are nourished. And as we nourish our soul, then the changes we see in our physical state, the changes we see in our emotional state and in our mental state, because everything is connected, everything is a vibration, everything is an energy. And so often when we have got soul nourishment, like this is talked about so much, which is so true. You know, many scientists are actually saying now addictions, afflictions, and even allergies are a result of unresolved distress within the body. Our physical body, where we've got aches and pains, oh, well, you know, it's just because I'm aging, oh, well, it's because I fell down 10 years ago and landed on my knee. Of course, those things can happen as a result of physical trauma, but our body is also a sensory organism. It's a sensory organ. So is our dog's body. And so our body can be like a roadmap. It can be like a navigator in itself to lead us to where we have got soul nourishment, where we are holding on to these unresolved emotional distresses, through example for the likes of trauma. And so, as an example of trauma, Tunka Sila, one of my wolf dogs, Tunka Sila and I were in an abusive relationship together, and we've both suffered with trauma. And you know what? actually, I'm not even going to say suffer. I'm going to take that word away. I don't even see it as suffering. We've both just been exposed to trauma. And so what's really beautiful with Tunkasila is she can detect adrenaline in somebody 48 hours after they've been to the gym. Because when she was in that abusive relationship, what her body as a vibration and frequency has stored as a survival strategy, as a place of like, ooh, when does my body feel threat? It's like a radar. When does my body feel threatened, and how do I need to have an awareness of this? Really what I want people to understand is anything and everything that a dog sees, hears, tastes, touch, smells or feels from before birth to present day. So remember, in terms of the development of eggs, the development of a fetus, as soon as that fetus is just a single cell forming, or even before they're a single cell, they are being influenced by the vibration when carried in the mother's womb. And so anything and everything that a dog, and it's not just applies to dogs, it applies to everything, anything and everything that any animal sees, hears, tastes, touch, smells or feels, is stored as information, is stored as vibrationally. How does this make me feel? Vibrationally, does this support my ecosystem and keep me vibrationally aligned? Does it knock me out of alignment? And so with Tunkasila, as she was being beaten, she was scared, so she was producing adrenaline. The person that was hitting her was also producing adrenaline out of anger. So she has learned, the presence of adrenaline is something that is a threat. Therefore, it becomes a survival strategy for her safety. And so her survival strategy tells her the presence of adrenaline in somebody 40 hours after being to the gym is still enough in that person's body to be a trigger for her. And what we then can do is explore for the soul nourishment and spiritual nourishment perspective of how do we support that dog's ecosystem? How do we support the dog's vibration? And of course we can, this is why I'm not a trainer just because that just doesn't speak to my heart, but training and teaching is really important. Of course it is for any animal, but this is why I also want us to just kind of go deeper and think deeper for some dogs, we have to go beyond that teaching and training, because this is not only something that is so deeply rooted in the dog's cells, but it's something that has created a distress within the dog's spirit, a distress within the dog's ecosystem, the dog's vibration, the dog's frequency. And so one of the things that I do for dogs, or explore for dogs, is I actually do shamanic ceremonies and soul work for dogs, and actually horses and cats right now as well, where I explore to see, is a soul retrieval needed? So the concept of a soul retrieval, again, it's applicable to all animals, where if an animal is exposed to something that for that individual is such a threat, and it could be as severe as being in an abusive relationship, it could be as severe as being in a car accident, it could be as simple from a human perspective of someone just going, like, we're walking in a supermarket and someone looks us up and down and goes, ugh. That could be enough. Like, wow, what is wrong with me? Why did that person just do that to me? And it could be such a wound that basically, just so that wound is not so heavy and such an impact within us, just part of our soul that is within us and around us just goes poof. It just, in psychological terms, in modern day psychology, it's classed as dissociation. It just leaves, just dissociates, just kind of unhooks and anchors. But we can go through our lives, and our dogs can go through their lives of having multiple soul losses, and where an animal, where a dog, where a human, any animal has had a soul loss or soul losses, again, that's part of what makes up our dog's ecosystem, a part that makes up our dog's nourishment. So that can then affect the dog's physical health, emotional health, mental health, and also their spiritual health. So I will explore to see, is a soul retrieval required, where I kind of go into an altered state of consciousness. I work with my kind of invisible team, my team from the unseen, and explore what soul aspect needs to be brought back, and then we bring it back. And so I've had to do this for Tunkasila a couple of times. I've had to do it now with her 3 times. Once was when it was a really big one, that was really, really intense, when I didn't know the teachings of soul retrieval, and then I started to learn about them, and I was like, I wonder if Tunkasila will need one, and she did. But also when we think of soul loss, and this isn't about panicking, this is not like, oh my goodness, my dog's had this, or like, because this is like how long is a piece of string. It depends on the individual, because what I'm about to share also applies to humans. But what can happen is soul losses can occur when an individual's had surgery. And because when we think of trauma, so soul loss happens where there is trauma, and when we think of trauma from a biological perspective, trauma is a nervous system response. So when we're having surgery, when the body is anaesthetized, the body kind of is listless, but the nervous system is still very much alive. And so anything that can be a tear, a break, an incision, a cut, that's a trauma. That's a trauma to the body. That's a trauma to the nervous system. The nervous system's as you go like, wake up, do something about it, get away. Your body's feeling pain. The body is undergoing trauma, but the body can't move because it's anaesthetized. And so the energy, the whole reason why from a soul loss perspective or from a survival perspective is we see in ourselves and we see in animals, or we watch wildlife documentaries of the flight and fight response, or we also have the freeze, or we can have the fidget, is when an animal's vibration is changing, is getting so heightened because like, wow, I feel like my life is on the line, my survival is uncertain, I need to do something, do I need to defend, do I need to run away, can I run away, am I going to get caught, have I got strength enough to fight, then that places that animal in a very, very heightened state of distress and a very heightened state of vibration. And what needs to happen so that trauma isn't held within the body is that energy needs to be discharged. So that's why you will see in wildlife documentaries like the prey animals naturally run, or sometimes you will see a prey animal like get caught but instantly play dead. It like stops moving, plays dead, and gets dropped again because the predator's like, oh, it was the movement that really excited me about the chase, and now I've obviously killed the animal, so I'm not really that bothered anymore. I'll kind of drop it and then eat it. But the animal plays dead, and so the second it's dropped, it can do one or two things. It can run off, or if you watch cats play with mice, or you watch wildlife documentaries, that prey animal will turn around and go all Jackie Chan on that predator, and you kind of sat there watching the documentary, go like, just run, like, dude, you're gonna get eaten, just run. But what is happening is the animal's body has got to such a heightened vibrational state that this energy needs to be discharged, otherwise it gets stored, and that can create trauma in the body. But also what can happen at the same time is that a soul loss can occur because the body can't do anything about it. And so I've had to, in Tunkasila's case, and also with other dogs, and it's not about like, oh my goodness, my dog's had surgery, it must need a soul retrieval, because that's just not true. But in Tunkasila's case, because she is a sensitive dog, she doesn't like going to the vets. She's had, Tunkasila's now 13, and she's had to have a couple of lumps removed, and one of them was cancerous. That it was the surgery. She needed to have a soul retrieval as a result of the surgery. So there are many ways that soul loss can happen, and there are many ways that soul retrievals can occur. We can have spontaneous soul retrievals. Dogs can also have spontaneous soul retrievals. But what I'm really interested in bringing together this whole movement, which is so beautiful. There's just this big movement now of like, wow, our dogs do have emotions, so we can talk about it. I mean, I'm sure that if you asked me that when I was 3 years old, I would still be like that. Of course, animals have emotions. Like we all have emotions to stay alive. And it really confused me even as a child of why, because even when I was a child, I remember hearing even in my family and, people that I looked up to and my elders, animals don't have emotion. They don't feel anything. And I'm like, that's just not true, and it's not true. But we've got this beautiful acceptance now of like, wow, yeah, okay, animals have emotions. Of course they have to have emotions. That's how they survive. We have these emotions as a primitive evolutionary toolkit for survival. But it's beautiful that we have this, understanding now and acceptance and opening of the importance of physical health for our dogs, of the importance of feeding them correctly, the importance of the right amount of exercise that is right for that individual, the importance of the emotional health of our dogs, that we really hear them and we really feel them and we really understand them again as individuals, but also that they have opinions and they have likes and they have dislikes. I always said, look, there's no such thing as a textbook dog, because unless we wrote a textbook for every dog in existence, there's no such thing as a textbook dog, because what one of my dogs, Tunkasila, likes is different to what Charlie likes, is different to what Cola likes, is different to what Max likes. But they also come, as I say, as a spirit having this experience as a dog, and from that they have these beautiful teachings for ourselves, these beautiful messages, these beautiful lessons. And so it's really important for us to honour that, this circle, this wheel as I see it, that is interconnected in every way, of supporting their emotional nourishment, their physical nourishment, their mental nourishment, but also with that their spiritual nourishment, and how if we are spiritually malnourished, if our dogs are spiritually malnourished, then that is impacting them physically, mentally, emotionally, as it is ourselves. And so with that, that's why I put together the something called the Canine Wellness Wheel, which I'm not going to talk about in great detail because it's going to take forever to talk about. But it's basically thinking about our dogs as an ecosystem. We place our dog here, we can put a little photograph of our dog in here, or just their name, and all the factors that are like energy gateways. They're like vibrational gateways that either feed our dog's vibration, they feed our dog physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or they can create distress, they can create vibrational turbulence, they can affect their frequency. And because we coexist so tightly with our dogs are in our home, this is why I love looking at the relationship, not just the relationship of ourselves and our dog and the spirit reason why we're here together, but also how our own wellness and our own soul nourishment and our own physical, mental and emotional nourishment is imperative for our own dog's wellness and health as well. So a big part of the Canine Wellness Wheel is then the Human Wellness Wheel, which is on the other side, of encouraging people, inviting people, sharing with people and teaching people that we are all just vibration and frequency. And if we truly want the best life for our dog, then that means we're going to want the best life for ourselves, and giving ourselves permission to do that, and giving ourselves permission to explore that, what is and what that looks like. And also the it's not quite a parody, but the there is a child screaming outside that's really distracted me. I'm like, that, are they in pain? I don't think they are. I think they're just playing with friends, but they're just not my train of thought. Yeah, totally not my train of thought. The importance of when we start to open this doorway of looking at our own vibration, our own spiritual nourishment, it is so beautiful. Like, I open my doorway really fully, although I've always been aware of it 9 years ago. I mean, I've been deep into this 9 years ago. And what I would say, using Tunkasila, my own dog, as an example, that she still struggles to cope. She's still, if there is a strange person or a strange dog that gets just too close to her, then that is too much for her. She still struggles with that. What I have noticed by working on myself and really two biggest things, working on myself and doing her soul retrieval, is the distance is a lot closer, and also her recovery time. So it could take her 3 or 4 days to recover from seeing a dog quite far away, from seeing a stranger. It could take her 3 or 4 days just to land, just to ground, just to be anchored. Now it can be 10 minutes of just, well, I've saw that and I didn't want it in my space, and that's made me feel vulnerable, but okay, it's gone now, I'm good. And also that's working on myself as well. And the importance to share here is, although it's a beautiful way of living, it's not easy. It's not easy because it means that we have to be fully honest and fully open and fully realise that most, if not all, the things that we've been told by others and also ourselves, like, are just not true. And so it becomes a complete rewiring, a completely, like, we're going to go into our house, we're going to God, whoever did our electrics is really bad, we're going to rewire our house. That's exactly what we need to do ourselves. It's a total rewiring. There's a beautiful saying of cells that wire together, fire together. And so we have to lay down brand new neural networks. But brand new neural networks that kind of speak from the heart, and from the heart we then speak to the head, rather than that are constantly speaking from the head. And it's a beautiful way of life. And the first victory is because it's a beautiful way of life, but it takes time. So I always say, hey, like, everything is perfect. Where we are right now is perfect. and there is no shame, there is no blame, there is no judgment. And the first thing to be as your victory is just a recognition of like, huh, I've just spent the last 3 hours just worrying about something that I don't even know what's going to happen. I've just spent the last 3 hours about something that happened to me like 5 years ago, and now it's just created anger in me. Okay, how can I look at that deeper? But just in a really soft way, just the recognition. First and foremost, the victory is I have an awareness, I have a recognition of it. And then with that, going into that heart presence, going into that stillness, it's so, so important. And when we work on ourselves in this way, like as I say, it's for me, it's profound. Although I also do more kind of canine behavior stuff, to come together when we are working with our dogs, supporting them as an ecosystem, for me that is also that spirit message of like, wow, the beauty of having the dog in whatever way it's come, because it allows us to then also deepen and fertilize our own spiritual nourishment. And then as we do that ourselves, we do it for our dogs. And that's the beauty of it, the absolute beauty of it. And so that's why I wanted to talk about the spiritual nourishment or canine nourishment of a different kind. We are so focused now on mental, physical, emotional stability, nourishment, health, which is so important and so true. But what I still feel is kind of it's coming in more and more and more, but still kind of like, oh yeah, it's still, don't still quite understand it, or people might judge me for talking about it, or I don't know, just I'm not like, I just don't quite know how to explain it. It's just there's a spiritual side as well, but we are spirit. Like everything that is alive is spirit, and so it's honoring and calling that forward. And when we do so, actually seeing our dogs very, very differently, seeing our relationship very, very different, and it just being like, it's just jewels. We are surrounded in jewels, we are surrounded in gifts, and then also seeing the gift that we are and seeing the gift that our dogs are and thanking them for that. So an invitation, a bit of homework that you may want to share with me at another time, or just for yourself, is I invite you and encourage you to, maybe if it might be coming for you right now, but just to spend some time just after this talk to sit with the intention in your heart of, wow, what are the gifts that my dog brings to me, and what is the message? What does my dog show up for me? What is my dog showing me that is within myself that is ready to come forward now and to explore, because I have that trust, I have that safety? And you know, one of them for me was, wow, I am so grateful for Tunkasila being so sensitive to her survival, because of that she saved my life. She absolutely saved my life. I'm so grateful for Tunkasila just really opening up her spirit to me, being this really wise grandmother that we can sit together and she shares with me these beautiful just teachings that I get to share with humans. It could be like one of my clients was getting really frustrated with one of her dogs, and really frustrated with one of her dogs barking, and I mean, it's confidential, so I'm not sharing what it is, but sitting with that and going, do you know what, let's just look at this a moment. Let's just look at everything as vibration and frequency and interconnectedness. We've got to a point now where like it doesn't feel like this is your dog, like it doesn't feel like this is distress from your dog. It feels like your dog is speaking to you, like your dog is literally going, I can't make it any more obvious that I'm giving you a message here, I'm giving you a teaching. So let's go deeper and tell me, just literally through, just hold it, get a pen and paper and just write, or just now speak. Just don't think it, just feel it and share with me what is coming through you when your dog is barking and then you feel this irritation. What is going to, just keep speaking, keep speaking, and then bang, there for the human, we found that core wound. And therefore the human found that core wound, and then what happened? The dog was like, that's what I was trying to tell you. And then it's like, God, the issues that I had with my dog, the challenges I had with my dog are gone. And so this is the beauty of, sometimes we get so focused on like, I want the best life for my dog, I want to fix my dog, and this is kind of what I'm going to end on. Like, there is nothing to fix. There is absolutely nothing to fix. And I don't mean in terms of, it's like on a deeper level. There is nothing to fix because everything is perfect. We are here having an experience, having a journey, having an exploration. And where we are right now and where our dog is right now is exactly where they're meant to be, exactly where we're meant to be. So in that sense, there is nothing to fix, just to sit with, just to feel, just to notice, and then to explore. So I'm really not talking from a perspective of like, oh, I really would love it if my dog had better recall. Then okay, we can work on that. But I would still look at deep of like, why do you feel you need that? Is it for a safety perspective? Is it because you want your dog off lead, etc., etc.? But at this moment in time, there's nothing to fix, and we get so focused as humans. We get so focused on wanting to fix our dogs, because sometimes it's because we're so unconsciously, like in our psyche, in our spirit, like we're so desperate to fix ourselves and so wanting and longing to fix ourselves, but we don't even know where to start, or it's too painful. Maybe we just don't feel that we're ready. We're so desperate to fix our dogs because we actually think there's something wrong with them, and there's nothing. There is nothing wrong with them. And then again, we can look at like, where does that need to fix something come from? Oh, well, I feel really embarrassed because my dog does this and my neighbour's dog doesn't. Well, okay, where does that embarrassment come from? Oh, I need to fix my dog because my family are really critical of what my dog does. Okay, well, that says more about them. Like, why are they being critical? Where nobody should be critical. So where does that criticism come from? So there's always this deeper message. There's always this deeper meaning. And again, sometimes we can get so frustrated with our dogs because they always show up authentically, and that's what we love in them, because deep down that's how we want to show up in ourselves. We want to like, wow, I wish I could just be as honest and truthful from a place of love and respect as my dog. And our dogs always show up honestly, openly and authentically, even if we don't like it at the time what they're showing us. They don't know any other way but to speak from their heart. And so from my heart to your heart, and from our dog's soul to our soul, in really making a difference for ourselves and for our dogs, and just like dropping a stone into a waterway, that having a rippling effect out to the collective. And that's what it's about. Is we do this work on ourselves, we therefore do it for the collective. As we do this work for ourselves, it gives everybody else permission to do it for themselves. And that for me is then bringing together that oneness, that wellness, which is what wellness is. I'm a canine wellness practitioner. I'm a human wellness practitioner. I focus on wellness in every way. And for me, wellness is oneness, it's wholeness. Whether we are the tiniest of ecosystem in a cell, or as a physical being that comes together with everything else physical as one hub of a giant organism together, it's coming back into that wellness and that oneness. And with that, replenishing our spiritual nourishment, and exploring what that is for ourselves and our dogs. And that is my share, my friends. Thank you for listening.